Welcome to Shift from River Wharfe Methodist Church. I'm Phil Kershaw. In this series we're going to take you on a staycation. Join us along the footpaths, through the fields, beside the rivers and past the ruins in our very own local area, the Yorkshire Dales. We're going to look at what it means to stay hopeful, stay active, stay refreshed, stay focused, stay nourished and stay firm. In today's session, we're going to be exploring the beautiful River Wharfe. It has its source in Beckhamons and meanders down the Dale, passing through Kettlewell, Burnsall, Addingham, Ilkley and of course our very own Berlin Wharfedale. In the section known as the Strid, there are a series of waterfalls and rapids and a deep underwater channel caused by dramatic narrowing of the River Wharfe from approximately 30 yards wide just to the north to the width of a very long stride in less than 100 metres. Its name, wharf, is derived from the Old English word to turn, and it certainly lives up to its name as it makes its way across the beautiful Yorkshire landscape, twisting and turning as it flows towards Cawood, where it joins the River Ouse on its journey onward to the ocean. There are few things more refreshing than bathing in the coolness of a river on a hot sunny day. But today we're looking at a deeper renewal of your mind and soul as well as your body. We're exploring what it means to stay refreshed.
A philosopher once said that you never step foot in the same river twice. Each droplet of water is different. The river has moved, it is flowing, it is fresh. And we'd like to hope that our lives are like that, vibrant and full of life at all times. But I think we've all had times when it feels somehow like the flow of our lives has become stilted. I want to talk about those times when we feel stuck, stagnant or shallow. Now, 2020 of course has given a lot of people a lot of reason to feel stagnant. The calendar might say it's August, but emotionally, I think I'm somewhere between February and March. Staying within the same four walls with the same people, even if they're awesome, can leave anyone feeling a bit immobilized. But we may have had other times in the past, or perhaps in the future we will have times, where it felt like the water dried up, like our lives stopped moving. New parents can feel like their life is on hold. A demanding job with no work-life balance can lead to emotional dehydration. Unhealthy relationships can impact connectivity and self-esteem and joy and a sense of security, all blocking the flow of life and vitality. Now, I had the chance to read up on rivers a couple of times during lockdown thanks to the Year 6 home learning curriculum. My family is not really one for being desk-bound, so we walked right here to River Wharfe to think about how rivers work. And it turns out there are different things that can stop a river's path. Rivers carry sediment from the mountains, carrying them along as they go. And so the first kind of stuckness that I want to consider is the stagnation that happens when we're carrying more in our lives than we ought to. Maybe you are carrying anger you've not let go of, or guilt or loss that you've never processed. And if that's the case, perhaps you need help from someone to mine through the silt in your life, to work out what lessons and memories you need to cherish and carry forward from those times, and which you need to let go of. The weight of other people's expectations, judgments, what other people think, those are also things that can make it hard for us to move forward with our lives. Maybe it's time for you to ditch those on the riverbanks and reclaim your own path. But what if you're the one putting pressure on yourself to be all things at all times to all people? If that's the case, you might need a reminder that it's not your job to carry the whole mountain to the sea all on your own. Like many others, particularly working parents, the COVID-19 lockdown gave me more than I could possibly juggle. It was impossible to check all the boxes, and I had to acknowledge something that I usually avoid: the fact that I'm not superhuman, that I couldn't do it all, that I had to leave some things on the riverbank that I would need to prioritize. It wasn't easy, and I think for a lot of us, if you had to honestly name your biggest critic, you might just give your own name. Now, the author of the best-selling book Eat, Pray, Love gives a great TED talk on writer's block. And before she wrote the book, when she told people she was a writer, they would say things like, "Aren't you afraid that if you keep writing and writing, you might never have a successful book?" And then after the huge success, people had a similar reaction. "Aren't you afraid that you'll keep writing and writing and never top that big success?" And she questions this idea that the anxiety of whether or not we will succeed, whether or not we will be able to do it, should stilt and block and stop an artist's creativity. And she shares a story about ancient Greece and how the ancient Greeks, they never viewed creativity as something which a person possessed and was able to then act from, but that creativity was an outside force, a divine force. In ancient Rome, with the same belief, they called that force a genius. And so there was this idea that people would have a genius who inspired them, as opposed to being a genius, which is such a static notion, which puts so much pressure on people to perform. And so the author spoke about times that she has worked and worked and worked, yes, putting in her own talents and her own time, but how in certain moments she would encounter something intangible that would inspire her to greater creativity. Her genius, she goes so far as to call it a glimpse of God. Rivers can dry up when they are disconnected from their source. And I'm not surprised that when you and I try to live our lives from a place of my own strength, drawing only from what I already have, that we risk burnout. And so I want to invite you to ask yourself the question today: what is my source? Where does my help come from? Or whom? In the first session of the Staycation series, I used a phrase you might have heard before. "The Lord is my shepherd. He leads me to green grass." In this collection of songs called the Psalms, the next line says this: "He leads me to quiet waters." This has been the source in my life personally. This has been what has helped me and filled me with strength. This is what has given me my sense of peace when life is crazy. This is where my serenity has come from in times that I felt helpless. Now, in the second session of Staycation, Janet spoke to us, and she used another phrase from that same song or psalm: "The Lord leads me in right paths." And I guess that is another aspect of what rivers are all about. They follow a path. And the paths do change. Satellite footage shows fascinating hopping about for decades for certain rivers. But mostly we know rivers to have their course charted out in front of them, this way and that way. Now, when a river is making its way across the land and it gets to a great obstacle of some kind, I really don't know what process it takes to decide which way to meander. If that's in the Year 6 curriculum, I think I missed it. But what I do know is how tricky we as humans find it when we are faced with our own mountains in our paths, our own fork in the road decisions. It can be so hard to try to decide between this job or that job, staying here or moving there, sending the children back to school or not. For a lot of us, hard choices leave us feeling stuck, paralyzed by indecision. And back to the river metaphor, we might stop flowing altogether, or let someone else channel our life choices for us. Or we might just drift along and let life happen without intentionality. But we're not rivers, and there has to be a better way. Ruth Change, a philosopher, says that when faced with a difficult choice, we can get gripped by fear of the unknown, and if we are likely to choose the less risky choice and just go with the flow. Well, she suggests that the key to overcoming this paralyzing anxiety is sometimes to stop trying to work out which choice is better, but rather to choose one of them and to make or create reasons that make it a better choice. To decide, what about me would make this a better choice? What can I add to my life, or what can I take away? How can I use this fork in the road as an opportunity for life change, to develop something there within me that wasn't there before? I can make moving to the city a better choice by going to the theatre regularly or volunteering at a homeless shelter. I could make the choice to live in the country a better choice by getting a bicycle and committing to riding it. I wonder what choice might be facing you right now, and whether you can use it as an opportunity to become more the person that you have been created to be. And then, of course, there's taking the next step. Making a choice here is one thing, but life change happens when we are brave enough to live into our decisions, when we step out into the water. Last week, Janet told us that their family had plans to teach their puppy how to swim while visiting the Lake District. Now, she's actually a water dog, but just couldn't bring herself to lift all 4 paws off the ground. Well, I am happy to report that Chuva did eventually get swimming. And of course, the webbed paws probably helped. And of course, doggy instincts kicked in. But I have a feeling that more than anything else, it was the loving touch and the encouraging voices and the patient presence of Janet and Mark and Robin that helped Chuva to surrender, to let the water lift her and to be refreshed. There is a story in the Bible about one of Jesus' friends. He wanted to climb out of a boat and step toward Jesus, who was walking on the water, but he was afraid and he started to sink. And I know some who would say that this story is not factual, but I know very few people who would say it is not true, that when we are afraid and unsure of ourselves, or feel alone, that we begin to sink. The very things that are meant to be refreshing can overwhelm us. And for me personally, the most beautiful truth in that story is not that H2O defied the laws of gravity, but that a hand reached out for Peter, and that a voice spoke his name, and that someone lifted him up and held him, that Jesus held him. But lifting our paws off the ground, or stepping out of the boat, or letting the river carry you forward, these are not easy to do when we don't know where we're going. I was once asked, what do all rivers have in common? And I said, water, but is it the same water in every river? And I said, banks, but they're all so different. And I said, source, but those geographical locations, they scatter rivers all over the world at the places where they start. What do all rivers have in common that bring them together? Maybe the answer is their destination. Maybe the answer is ocean. Even for tributaries linking up to rivers like this Wharfe River does further along the way, the pathway that each river follows is not arbitrary or meaningless. It is a pathway toward the freedom and the depth of the sea, the promise of oneness and wideness and destiny. What if you and I stopped for a moment today and asked ourselves, where am I going? What do I want my life to have been about? Where the stream of the here and now meets the edge of the ocean and I experience eternity. How does it change the sediments that you and I carry with us in our activities and our interactions? And what might you leave on the riverbank when you consider the satellite view, the bigger picture of your life in eternal perspective? And how might it change the choices that we make and the pathways we take? How does it impact how you and I respond to the mountains that stand in our way? When we remember who our source is, and when we know what our destination is, how much more courageous would you be in your convictions and commitments and living life to the full if you always acknowledged that not one step off the shore and not one stroke of your swimming ever has to be on your own. When you know that you are called and held and led by one who always makes a way to lead you to the ocean. A philosopher once said that you never step foot in the same river twice. And it's not just that each droplet of water is different. He said it was because you are not the same person. How will we live a different and more deeply refreshing life if we let ourselves be changed along the way?
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you, I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you, I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you, I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 That is who you are.